It's Thursday, February 24th, 2011. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, unions.
Let's do this.
So a problem in New York that people probably don't run into that often unless they live here is that there are jackasses who will try to hold the subway door open if they didn't make a train.
Well, they do
or if
the
they're
same.
waiting for someone.
They do the same thing on the elevator, right? It's like you got an elevator, right? And somebody's running to the elevator, and someone in the elevator will hold the elevator. Now, sometimes in a building where the elevators suck, that's a good strategy. But in some buildings, it's a bad strategy for overall elevator speed.
Yeah, but
and
the subway, it's the worst because it gets in the way. Like, it messes up the whole system because the train's late for nothing.
If you hold the subway for 10 seconds for one guy, so he sneaks in, the train is delayed. Now it's got to close the doors, and it takes 20 seconds, but 20 seconds times 1,000 people. That's could be an hours of time that you have just wasted.
So the
because you
policy
waited for one guy
in New York is that they appear to be able to ticket people who do this. So they don't do that often. But the
I've never
conductors,
seen that happen.
Conductors will usually, because there's no cops on the platform, they'll do things like if someone's holding it shut, they'll wait for a little bit, and then they'll open the door a tiny bit and then slam it shut again to try to hurt the guy or knock him off the train, and then they'll go. But yesterday, I was coming home, and I didn't make the train because, fat guy blocked me on the escalator as always.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fat guy instead of fat girl, different. But this guy has got 2 fingers in it, and he's holding it. And there's a guy on the platform who works for the MTA.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the guy with the microphone who announces when trains are coming.
Yep.
So he walks over, and he stands behind the guy, and he's like, "Brother, what are you trying to do?" And the guy ignores him. And he's like, "Here, let me help." And he reaches in behind him like he's going to help him pull the door open. And then he grabs the guy's hands, whips him out of the train, and pulls him back and says, "You jackass, the fuck are you doing? Get the fuck out of here." And the guy turns around like he's going to do something, but then he slinks off.
You can't do anything. He's an MTA employee.
Yeah.
If you touch him, you'll be in jail for 7 years.
That's like hitting a cop.
It's like you're done. You can't touch the MTA employees.
I love how he actually faked that he was going to help the guy just in order to chastise him further.
Yeah, that's a quality MTA employee. Imagine if somebody, if anyone who touched you, immediate 7 years in jail, and there's almost a guarantee that they're gonna lose in court, right? Because there's laws. You would totally just be like, well, whatever, no one's fucking with me. Even if you were a weak-ass midget or a big, fat, a schlub who had no physical ability whatsoever, you'd be like, no one's messing with me.
Well, you see...
Not while I'm on the job.
There's a problem there, because if you tick someone off enough, they'll just get you when you're not on the job.
That's, yeah. Well,
yeah.
That's a problem.
I generally have a policy of I will not entangle my affairs with anyone who has little to lose.
No, me either. But I'm just saying, if you're an MTA guy, right, that's a good move. Yeah, I was on the train just now, and it was stuck underground for a half hour. It was the worst. It sucked. Anyway.
Yeah. So I don't have much. It's Thursday, kind of a quiet week. We're getting ready for convention season. Very soon we'll be at PAX and all those other things. So I want to briefly talk about not the fact that Borders is closing. We all know. No one cares. And I actually recommend don't even bother going to one of the closeouts. There's nothing good is going to be left, and the prices won't be better than Amazon.
Yeah, usually the way these closeout things work is number one, if you're in a crowded place in New York City, there's enough people they're going to rate it, and there won't be anything good left, right? And two, they start out with 20% off, and then they go down to 25.
Yeah, when
and then
Media
they go
Play
down
went
to
out of
30,
business in RIT,
right?
We went to the Media Play when they had the real sales, 80, 90% off. It was 90% off things I wouldn't take for free.
Yeah, they put they know what's valuable and what's not, right? So the good stuff gets the little discounts, and the bad stuff gets huge discounts. So it's you either don't want it, I won't even take that for $1,
Yep.
or it's I'd buy that for $1. Well, it's $10. Well, fuck it, I'm not buying it, right? So, and if you wait to the very, very end, right, of the bargains before they finally close the store, there's basically nothing left. I only recommend going if you're interested in buying the store's fixtures, because that is always a good deal. It's bookshelves.
Yep.
$50, probably, cheaper than IKEA.
Or possibly crappy coffee table books and references.
But you can get stuff like the chairs and tables out of the cafe.
Yeah.
You might even be able to get who knows? I haven't been to one. They might be selling off the espresso machines or the cash registers. They sell in everything, right? Oh, I guess they have to keep at least one cash register to the very end.
But there's so if the last guy who buys the cash register just takes it. But
You could go it. It is actually not a bad idea. If you're a armed robber or unarmed robber, go hit up a Borders because they probably be having a lot of cash there.
Yeah, they'll have a lot of cash there. No, they probably won't.
Well, if there's increased sales because of the, this whatever.
The only thing you got going for yourself if you rob a place that's going out of business is that nobody gives a shit. No one's going to fight to protect that merchandise.
No, not the merchandise, but they'll fight to protect the money in the
No, they
register.
won't. If you're getting paid minimum wage, knowing that...
No, but the police will.
Yeah, because the police are hanging out in the Borders.
Anyway,
this article talks more about the idea that what's going to happen to all the Borders stores, because Borders stores are huge, and I think this article is way optimistic as to the prospects for the use of these stores, because it's talking a lot about how, yeah, they'll be able to turn them over and maybe other bookstores will come in or churches or local, like gyms and whatever. But
I could see some gyms and some churches.
I did some research and there are still a surprising number of media plays that are still empty. There isn't a demand for stores this big anymore because all the places that need stores that big already have all the locations they need. They're not expanding because the economy sucks.
That's one of the major reasons the Borders went under is because Borders originally differed from Barnes & Noble in that it had the big music section. And then no one bought, Media Play also. And then since when they got rid of the music section because no one bought music anymore,
I remember
they had all this
RIT.
extra space. So every Borders was paying extra rent for extra space that it didn't need, and they filled that extra space with books it didn't sell.
Well, the thing is, it's a weird...
cafe.
It's not really an extra cost. The stores were big because they had a bunch of stuff in them, but there was no opportunity cost. Nothing else could have gone there.
Yeah. But it still meant you were paying rent for extra. You were paying more rent for more space. Every square foot costs you money.
Yep.
If the Borders stores had been smaller originally and not had a music section, they might still be here today.
But at the same time, part of their thing was that they were in these big boxes.
They had other problems.
I mean, Borders and Barnes & Noble, stores like this are primarily designed to be in a very large monolithic location separate from other things, or at the best in a shopping plaza. And I don't know, I feel like if we extrapolate, if we do a Y+30, there is very little cause for stores like this, the very, very large magnet specialty stores that have branches everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And considering how many media plays are
these kinds of stores haven't even been around for that long. They were, even when I was young, like places like Caldor or whatever were kind of rare.
Well, you lived in a very different area. I lived in the Midwest where basically every street that had commerce on it was stores like Barnes & Noble and Borders, just as far as the eye could see.
Yeah, but I mean,
these kinds
of stores weren't around in like the 70s and the 80s. They just started to appear,
Well, it depends on where you live.
I mean,
Every
there was
area is
Sears.
different.
Sears is pretty much it, right?
That's a department store. Usually those anchor malls and things.
Yeah.
But remember a while ago I did an article talking about how malls are having a lot of trouble getting people to be in them.
You don't say.
I'm thinking we're going to have in the next 15 or so years a gigantic surplus of very large, very nice, empty big box stores and malls.
Well, a lot of them are just going to be condemned or whatever. But
yeah, but what's going to go in their place?
Hopefully nerds will use them. If they can lower the rent enough, we could do awesome shit in that
If I
space.
were you, punk kids, it won't work in cities because you could knock down any store and replace it with something that costs twice as much overnight.
Yep.
But out in the suburbs, stores like this aren't going to refill, and malls are going to be empty.
Well, you might start to see, a entire strip mall go down and be replaced with housing. You might see.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
You might see a big box store get an office in it. Someone renovates the inside.
Scott, when strip malls disappear and get replaced by housing, that basically destroys the local area because you start to shift toward a purely residential area with no commerce to prop it up.
Yeah.
At all.
You might see some other stuff go in there, but hopefully you're going to see cool things go in there. Like someone will make an auditorium, or someone will make a community center, or someone will move their town hall into one if their town hall.
I think this is going to be a
police
big
station.
Societal problem in general out in the burbs of what's going to happen to malls and big box stores, because the things that, like, the biggest signs of urban or rural plight is when things like churches move into what was commercial space, or commercial space, especially on commercial streets like a main street, turn into residential. I mean, remember Beacon, the big problem they had was that as the economy shut down, all the storefronts turned into apartments. And they passed a law saying that all the apartments had to turn back into storefronts as part of the kind of rejuvenation of the city. I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a boom of paintball and crazy nerdy shit because...
That's what I hope.
I think it will. And my reasoning for this is that the entrepreneurial spirit, if you discount the .com kind of bullshit, exists primarily in my eyes just as a kind of uninvolved person in that whole area of the world or area of commerce. It's people who are making restaurants and nerds who just want to do something cool, like make my gaming store. And if rents go way down, the only thing keeping nerds from doing that is the fact that rent is too high.
Or at least, if something bigger, right, moves from say, like, you got something that's in a small store now or a medium store now, right? And it moves into the big store, then the nerdy thing can move into the small store that was just evacuated.
I mean, it wouldn't work in New York City. I mean, the complete strat, it'd be great if they could move into Borders, but they couldn't afford that ever.
No.
But out like in Poughkeepsie, the Dragon's Den, if they got a place the size of a Borders, they could turn into a Millennium. Probably overnight almost.
Maybe.
Just have magic tournaments.
They don't have enough merchandise.
You don't need merchandise. You have space. You use the space for something.
Yeah, I don't know how creative they are.
Yeah. What I do find interesting, as a kind of random aside, this article on Tampa Bay Online, at the bottom has comments. Almost all the comments are, this comment was removed by site staff.
Why don't they just remove the comment completely? Why do they leave the words there that
Why
the comment was
does
removed?
any newspaper in the world have a comment section?
They should just use discuss.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I want to talk a little bit about it's sort of news because they're currently battling the crazy Baptist church, right? But
Anonymous?
Yeah, I want to talk about some Anonymous because you haven't talked about them on the show in a long time. And the main thing I want to talk about, though, is...
Yeah, because there's a lot to talk about with Anonymous.
The mainstream media's complete inability to, like, understand what Anonymous is.
Wow.
It's like they just can't sort of... They talk about it like, so is this an official Anonymous thing? Or Anonymous said that? Anonymous didn't say that.
You know what? You know what the answer is? Yes. Anything that claims to be anonymous is officially anonymous.
Yeah. And also, no, nothing that anyone says is anonymous. They're both true. It's like these people can't seem to grasp the idea that there is an entity that is not official, does not have a set structure, does not have a head person, does not have any people with it. It's just a label that anybody can use this label. It is I could come out and I could say, this episode of Geeknights is brought to you by Anonymous. And you know what? That means it is, but it also means it's not.
Well, because I am a member of Anonymous, straight up.
Yeah, everybody is.
Even if I've never
isn't.
posted on 4chan.
It's like, how can you not comprehend this? Did you not watch Ghost in the Shell?
I have a feeling they have not watched Ghost in the Shell.
Have they not watched Durara?
I'm getting that impression.
Maybe they should watch those things.
What I find really cool is that in my daily conversations, whenever Anonymous or the internet or society come up, I can use terms like second order simulacra that I learned from Ghost in the Shell. Totally legit. That makes my life a little bit cooler.
It's like, how can they just don't get it. It's like, there's no official organization. There's a bunch of people, some of whom are like-minded and some of whom are not.
It is a very alien idea to people who didn't grow up with the internet.
They all communicate through the same sort of medium, so they get to see a lot of what each other are thinking. So they're sharing parts of their brain with each other. And when there is
really
a convergence of ways, there will resonate and activity will occur.
But Scott, it's really easy to understand why they don't understand it. Let's use an example of DictoChat, all right? What is DictoChat during
you mean PictoChat on the DS?
I mean DictoChat.
What the hell's DictoChat?
What do people type in PictoChat?
Oh, okay. Whatever.
So if we're doing, say, a panel, right, at a convention, or everyone's in the audience watching, say, an event at a convention, and everyone who's there has their DS out, and they're talking in PictoChat.
And the Wi-Fi doesn't just crumble?
They're having a sideband communication. They're having this kind of separate meeting or separate entity that exists concurrent to and kind of responding to an event or a community, but yet is wholly separate from it. And people who aren't in the DictoChat channels have no idea it even exists and cannot interact with it. The internet is like that for the majority of people over the age of 45.
Right, but here's the thing. Plenty of times, it's not like these media people, like, they're not morons, right?
Who are they going to ask?
No, it's like, they talk to people who obviously know what's going on.
Who? When? No, they don't. Ever.
Yeah, they do.
Who have they talked to?
Because go look through the recent news, right? Even especially with this Westboro church, fighting, right? There are plenty of people who, quote, represent Anonymous, but basically it's just some guys, or one guy or another talks to the media in some form or another.
Yes, but
those people, while, who knows who they are, they're anonymous, but they're clearly people who know what's up because, you can tell just from the way they're talking.
And I know to you that people
they're like, you mad? What's up?
But Scott, I know to you those people don't explain what the deal is to the real people.
They do, but those real people still don't seem to get it.
Because it doesn't make sense to someone who didn't grow up with the internet.
And there's also more lulls if they don't understand.
I mean,
which is a problem.
They don't understand that pretty much every single person who has access to technology who is between the ages of 8 and 28 in the entire world, it has a collective consciousness that is constantly communicating.
Yep.
They don't realize that. They have no idea that you and me have more in common with punk kids in Libya and Iran than we do with our neighbors.
Yeah.
That, in fact, we communicate with people around the world more than we communicate with the people behind these walls. They have no idea. That is so crazy to them. It's a zebra storyteller.
But we told them the zebra story like 100 times.
No, we didn't actually. Do you think they actually listen? That's the other problem.
Maybe.
I mean, if I sat down one of these reporters and I was like, look, and I made them watch Ghost in the Shell, and I explained second order simulacra and first order simulacra and resonances and how all these people are kind of resonating and acting together as one because they all individually came to the same conclusion, but there was no person who actually instigated it. They're gone. They have no idea. That won't happen. There's no way. Give up.
Well,
In fact, don't give up. We are wizards.
Yeah. I think what but here's the other reason I wanted to talk about this, because I have a partial solution, right? I think that what we need to do is we need to make some sort of anonymous news network, and then it will just,
Scott, we already did.
What do you mean?
Geeknights.
No, but
YouTube.
we should present it, right, as a real newspaper. Like, it should, the website should look like a real newspaper's website, and it should, have articles and
I would do it a different way. You know what I would do? I would make it a network that has reporters. And basically, someone just has to anonymously post YouTube videos that are just like news with anchors, but they're wearing the stupid V mask. And they just report on things. And once one person does it, someone else will start doing it. And then there's no way to say who the official people are. It just happens.
Yeah, but I think that, right, it would provide news.
No, it would provide hilarity.
But also news from people, right, who understood, what was going on, Like once in a while, someone would give a serious news report, right? And the news report wouldn't be by someone who doesn't understand anything in the world that is newer than the year 2000.
Yeah. So let's do it.
All right, sure.
Yeah, we've got a video camera.
Okay.
I got to buy a couple of V masks.
Gee, people won't know who it is. Well, we'll be really anonymous with those.
But things of the day. I really like this. It's just a stop motion animation beatbox song where every note is the name for an animal.
All right.
Like cow, baboon, baboon. I don't know. What else can I say? It's really cool.
But baboon, it's baboon.
Yeah, but he says it like baboon.
It's cheating.
Yeah, kind of like how horse is horse.
That's cheating. Also.
Horse.
That's also cheating. Be horse. All right.
Cheval.
So this, I don't know, this might have been thing of the day already. It's been all over the internet. It's pretty old. It's at least weeks, if not months old.
What, My Little Pony?
No.
No?
My Little Pony's from fall of 2010. It's just an image. It's a simple JPEG, but it is a hilarious JPEG if you have not yet seen it. And, judging by how many people on the internet post things that are old and I say, oh my God, that's 10 years old. The fact that this is less than 10 years old, I'm sure there are listeners that have not seen it yet. So I'm going to use it for thing of the day anyway.
It harkens back to a simpler time.
Yes, it's a JPEG, and the JPEG says Wolverine or 2 Batman. And once you see it, that's all you need to do. It's a JPEG. It'll take you 5 seconds.
And of course, before the main topic, we have to do the meta moment because we will be at the Penny Arcade Expo in Boston coming up. 3 weeks?
Too soon.
Oh my God. I just finished the panels.
We just did not completely finish the panels.
Yeah,
they require buffing.
But we are doing 5 panels in 3 panel slots.
3 hours, 5 panels. We're just that crazy.
Yep.
There's also a bunch of panels by other peoples that we know.
Luke
that you
Crane,
should also
Jared
go.
Sorensen, etc.
Lots of people.
And otherwise, the weekend right after that, we're going to be at ZenkaiCon doing a bunch of gaming panels and I think 1 anime panel.
Alrighty.
And we are going to be at Anime Boston doing at least 4 panels.
Oh, snap.
We'll get the details for you later, but yes, if you are a regular of Anime Boston, we will be there.
It's convention season.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm actually looking forward to Anime Boston.
I'm looking forward to all these conventions.
The last anime.
I'm just not
anime
looking forward to
con-
transportation.
I mean, the New York Comic Con Anime Festival is not really an anime con anymore. The last anime con I went to was Anime Boston.
You know, actually, we're talking about Anime Boston, which is, I think, later in April.
Yeah, like
actually.
April 21st-ish.
Yeah, if we're already talking about Anime Boston, we should also be talking about the Mocha Festival, which is on April 9th and 10th.
Oh, crap.
2 weeks before Anime Boston.
Museum of Comic and Comedic Arts.
Comic and cartoon art.
Comic and Cartoon Arts.
Yes.
And they do a comic festival
Yes.
in New York.
Yep.
In the Armory building.
And actually, that week in between the Mocha Festival and Anime Boston is Icon, which we've never gone to and probably won't go to.
Oh, great. Sorry, Icon.
Sorry.
I think you've invited us.
No, they don't think they've invited us.
They have.
Also, let's see. We got Book Club book is Hyperspace.
God hasn't read it yet.
I read a chapter. I'm going to keep reading. It'll probably be the next Thursday episode in 2 weeks from now. Unless, we'll see. Maybe. Depends on the schedule. But yeah, hopefully that will be the Thursday episode 2 Thursdays from now.
And of course, we've been repeating this a lot, but it seems to be working. We have a rockin' forum, and if you like us and or My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, you should be hanging out in the Geeknights forum.
One more thing I do want to, I realized lately it's strange. We got like a whole bunch of listener emails recently, and usually we don't get that many listener emails, and I think that's mostly because we don't read listener emails.
Well, we read them. We do not read them out loud on the show.
Right. I think maybe we should maybe let's read one if we have
All
one.
All right. I'll tell
and
you
then
this.
we'll make it incredibly quick, but then maybe
Next
that will
week.
encourage a lot more mailings if we read them.
Next week on Monday, when we do the Monday show, we will read the best listener email we have received to date.
Yeah. And then, so it's just geeknights@frontrecruit.com and send us emails, and we're going to start reading, I guess, one on the show. We'll do more
We'll
geek
see.
back.
I always find
If they don't suck.
I always find the listener email segment of any other show very tedious and tend to fast forward through it.
Yeah, but we'll see how it goes.
Because the emails are either a question that's very specific to one person,
yeah,
or
I'm
they're
not going to read that.
or they're a you guys are so awesome, oh my god, you changed my life.
Or there's something they could have checked on Google.
So there was a time, you understand, a different time, when
Like over 100 years ago.
when the working man in the coal mine didn't get shit.
Well, he still usually doesn't get shit.
Nah.
In many places in the world, they don't get shit.
We had a labor movement.
Child slaves picking chocolate in the Ivory Coast.
Yep. Never mind slaves.
Slaves, well, digging for diamonds.
Yeah.
Slaves
or even,
in the U.S. 200, 300 years ago.
Yeah, picking cotton and such. And I don't know. Unions have had a long and tumultuous history, and it's interesting that technical workers, at least ITCS, computery people, unions by and large don't exist in our industry.
No, not at all.
So it's interesting when I'm reminded of unions because I have a very complex opinion on their necessariness, I guess.
Yeah, it's strange because, it's like most people have, very simplistic political views, right? They're either there's political parties out there called like the Labor Party.
Or the
in
rent
many
is
countries.
too damn high party.
Right. So there's a lot of people who are they're anti-corporate. They're like, if a company does it, it's bad. Or if it's for the workers, it's bad. Company's good. And it's like there's no subtlety to their political opinions.
Now, some of my political opinions are very blunt. For example, I believe that freedom of speech is the most important thing ever, and I think that trumps all other rights.
I think that there is a right that trumps freedom of speech.
Yes.
Freedom to not just get killed.
All right, so how does it trump it? Because
it's life and then liberty. So life comes first, and
but-
then liberty comes second.
But what I'm saying is that when is there ever a case where you would have to give up the right to not be shot to keep the right to talk?
I'm just saying.
How could that happen?
If I had a choice between giving up the right to
And
talk
in
or
fact-
giving up the right to breathe, I'm giving up the right to talk.
But think of it this way. Say there was some sort of, we lost the right to speech. Would you put your life on the line to keep it?
Yeah, but I'm not just gonna, I'm not gonna give, if I had to,
That's not what I was saying. Anyway,
Anyway.
I have a fairly, that there's not a lot of subtlety to the opinion that freedom of speech is number one.
very important.
But yet, when it comes to unions, my opinion is not indifferent. it is ambivalent. There's a big difference. A lot of people make this mistake, even in our forum. So I guess we should get this out right now. If you're indifferent, it means you don't give a shit. You do not feel strongly at all in any direction.
Yeah, so if you're indifferent, say about, the cost of pizza, then if pizza was $1 million, you go meh. And if pizza was negative dollars, they are paying you to eat pizza, you go meh. That's indifferent.
But if you are ambivalent, it means that you are ambivalent, as in you are being pulled in multiple directions with equivalent force. For example, on unions, I am ambivalent in that I have very strong and conflicting opinions.
Yeah, it's like
in many directions.
You go on the one hand, that pizza being expensive, I can see why, the price of dough is rising.
But on the other hand,
man's got to eat some pizza. You can't be charging that much. That's just not fair. I don't know. How much should pizza cost? That is how you feel about the unions. Now, the thing is, back in the olden days, right, when unions got big in the Industrial Revolution times, right, they were extremely necessary because you had people who were working in, conditions that were deadly, basically, right? And the people who ran those deadly factories really had no reason. They're like, why should I make my factory less deadly? It's like I'm still, there's plenty of people lining up to work in my factory. So if a worker dies, I can just replace them. The labor is not very highly skilled. I can train someone real quick.
Yep. You also had situations like the company town where, all right, we'll give you a job and a place to live. Yeah, we pay you, and you just pay your rent right back to us. And, there's a company store right next to your house, and, the prices are way higher than outside.
Yeah.
And you can't get anywhere. It's not like there's cars.
Yeah, right? Or it's not like you can afford a car because I'm not paying you that much.
Yeah. And if you want to buy a car, guess who you're buying it from?
So basically, even though these people were not technically slaves, they perfectly were able to quit and leave. They had all these rights of freedom of speech and freedom of everything. Realistically speaking, they were indentured servants. If they wanted to get money and to eat, they were pretty much at, the complete mercy of the people who own the company that they work for.
It's
Their
the
boss,
difference between a de jure right and a de facto right. I mean, I have the de jure right to do certain things, like to get legal counsel if I'm arrested. But the fact is, if I don't have money, I am not getting a good lawyer.
That's right. So,
and everything's like that. And it's this. With labor, we had a situation where we had a free market, by and large, and the free market, the invisible hand that Republicans are so fond of, did not select for fair labor practices or labor practices that were beneficial towards society. You could argue that the way labor was done at the turn of the century was awful and was ruining our society.
Yep. So the only thing that people could do, and no one else has thought of something else another solution yet, is to unionize, which is where you get everyone in the factory to stop working. And then it's like, well, we're not your indentured servants anymore. You have to make a deal with us. And you know what? Nobody is going to come to work in your factory unless you make it less deadly and unless you pay us more money and unless you lower the prices in the company store. And
the trouble there
you stop being a jerk and whipping us.
Is that there are situations like, I grew up in Detroit, and it's something that most people outside of Detroit or Michigan don't know or care about. But when I was a kid, the Detroit Free Press, all the writers and everyone involved went on strike. And it was this huge deal. Like, it was in the papers every day.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been, there's plenty of strikes.
But
strikes in sports,
but here's
strikes
the
in
thing.
sanitation.
You know what happened?
Yep.
They hired all scabs, and the paper just kept going without a hitch. And the scabs were way better than everyone who had quit to strike.
Yeah.
And it was a really dicey situation all around. It got very heated. There's a lot of violence issues, and I feel. But you said there's only two. We've only come up with one way to solve this: unions. I would argue there are three kind of directions you can go in terms of labor. One is absolute free market, not capitalism, which, as Adam Smith said very clearly, is not a completely free market by any stretch. Or you can, and that has its pros and cons. That may be a free market if people are truly free to choose where to work and to bargain individually, that society will converge upon optimal solutions. Another way to look at it is that unions, that there is a free market, but people who work can collectively bargain, which of course can be undermined if everybody's quits, but there is still a big enough labor pool to where that didn't matter. The third way is just regulation. A government coming in with guns and basically saying, look, you can only get away with X.
Yeah, I mean, that's what, in the U.S., we definitely have the third part, right? We have OSHA.
Yep.
Which is, I think OSHA itself has eliminated, it's not perfect, but what government thing is, right? But it has largely eliminated the need for many, many unions.
I'm cool with the fact that the government will get people in trouble if someone doing construction isn't given a hard hat.
Yeah, right? It's like, you don't need to make a union if you're, for the problem of workplace deadliness. We have things like workers' comp and such like that, right? So you might have another reason, a valid reason to form a union, but at least that is not one of them. No one is allowed to make a workplace that is deadly. So therefore, nobody in the United States has to, risk their lives more than necessary for their profession, or take unnecessary, ludicrous risks just to eat, which is good.
Yep. But at the same time, look what's happening in Wisconsin. I'm so... I'm not... It bothers me that I'm not amazed, nor am I surprised, but I am angry. But I'm angry at almost everyone involved.
I'm just glad I don't live in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm real glad I live in New York. But let's back away from all the kind of high-level stuff first, because as a person, as a solipsistic individual, as me, an island alone, and my personal self-interest, irrespective of everyone else in the world, I have a very different opinion of unions from that perspective than I do from I'm actually an intelligent person who understands what it's like to be someone other than me perspective.
Yeah, because I mean, while I completely understand that, there are many cases where unions need to exist, and I believe that, and I'll fight for those, times. In my personal life, in the life of Scott Rubin, every interaction with unions has been a negative one, as in the unions have only caused Scott Rubin trouble. A union has never given any benefit to Scott Rubin, only problems for Scott Rubin.
So I was a kid, and the janitors went on strike at my school, and because of the union stuff, nobody else was allowed to do the work. So students weren't allowed to, for example, volunteer to sweep up the hallways.
Mm-hmm.
That was union bullshit. Or, I don't know, every convention we go to, we got to pay some dude
That's in a
$80
convention center
to walk down and plug in my laptop.
Yeah.
And it's not even that they need that money. It's just that they have... I hate the unions and convention centers. There's no need for that bullshit.
Yep. I mean, the times I think when you need a union are when there is an employer who there is not a wide choice of employers for a particular skill, right? Like, let's say, everyone with computer skills, there was only Microsoft, and there was really no one else to work for because Microsoft provided all computer services, or the vast majority of them. There's basically nowhere else to get a job, really. So if you have that particular skill set, your choices of employment are Microsoft or not employed. So basically, Microsoft effectively owns you if that's your skill set, and it would be too onerous for you to change your skill set in the middle of your life.
Or even another very similar example, the town where there are industries, but there are not many. Like, there are only a couple of employers, even if it's unskilled, completely unskilled labor. If you're geographically limited, and within a community there is a small number of employers, those employers have a lot of power over your lives.
Yes, for example, you live in a town, and in that town, there is a bread factory, right? So 90% of the people who live in that area work in the bread factory. Well, they could move somewhere to work in a different bread factory because they have bread baking skills.
And now we have a free society. They are free to do that. But the reality is, it is not necessarily that easy to pick up your family if you're poor and go somewhere else.
Yeah, bread factory, you don't make that much money unless you're the boss, in which case you don't care,
yeah.
Right? But so basically, the bread factory, because you live there, the bread factory owns you kind of indirectly, unless you make a union to, gain some upper hand against the bread factory. So, yeah, in those cases, you need a union. But the fact is,
a convention center should
does
not be able
need
to
a
obligate
union.
me to hire their shitty security and charge a ludicrous amount for it.
Yeah,
I should be able to hire my own security, whoever I want.
There are plenty of places to get jobs as a security guard. There's no reason they need to have a union. There's plenty of places to get a job as a food service employee. There's no reason they need a union. There's no reason that the janitors need a union. There are plenty of buildings to janitor in besides convention centers.
But there's the problem in New York, at least, where, yes, there's plenty of buildings that all need janitors. But it's mostly the kind of janitorial work that is needed mostly. I mean, there are very skilled janitors, but most of what they need is basically unskilled labor. There is a nigh infinite labor pool.
Yeah, it's sort of like if you don't have skills, right? Even in a case where you maybe could use a union, like a geographic limitation, if your job is not a skilled job, your union doesn't really hold much sway, right? That's the example you have at the Free Press. Even though, they thought they had skills of journalism, the fact is they didn't have skills of journalism. The scabs were better.
Now, this is why
So if you don't have skills that you're withholding from the employer, your union doesn't mean anything because they can take anyone off the street to do your job for you.
Now, I feel like that's okay. I think, because what bothers me about a lot of unions is anytime there's a requirement to use the union or not, or any time other than, monopoly situations like if Microsoft were the only computer employer or, everybody works in the coal mine because that's the only job in town.
Mm-hmm.
In those situations, I feel like there should be kind of an elevated level of union power above and beyond kind of what I'm about to say. But I think by and large, the way unions should generally work is that there should be a right to unionize. Employers should not in any way be able to punish people for forming a union.
No, not at all.
But at the same time, they should not be obligated to not hire union people.
Yeah, I mean, for example, let's say I happen to get a job at a place, right? And that job is unified. I work in a factory, right? And there's a union there. I should not be obligated to pay dues to that union unless I personally choose to do so. And they should not be able to discriminate against me in any way. If those people want to collectively bargain, why should I be forced to join their union? And likewise, why should the employer, unless, be forced to not hire people, who aren't in the union, right? That's bullshit. It's like, if those people feel that they are being, treated poorly and they want to unionize, good for them. But if I don't feel I'm treated poorly, why should I be forced to go in with them?
When I worked at IBM, there was a big push, and it was really like they were cracking down on it, and people were getting fired all over the place. Of a lot of the people in the site were trying to unionize, a lot of the technical people and everything. And it was this weird war where they'd leave like scary, poorly put together pro-union propaganda like in the bathrooms.
Okay.
And in return, the company would put out these notices saying things like, here's why the union is a bad idea.
Yeah, that's something. It's like companies can't force you not to unionize. But I remember reading a story once, may or may not have been true, about a guy who wanted to unionize the Walmart he worked in, right? Which I could see, depending on where the Walmart was, might be a good idea.
A lot of Walmarts really are the only employer in an area.
Yeah, and it's also generally you don't treat the employees particularly well.
Yeah.
In some cases, it's not a good place.
But at the same time, look at, for example, Starbucks in cities. They treat their employees very well, despite the fact that it's relatively unskilled labor.
Yeah. Well, you need some training. I mean, I couldn't do it. I need training.
Scott, I could train you how to make coffee in a Starbucks.
Yeah, but you got to remember how to make all those different ones. You got to do them right.
You realize it's not that hard.
There's a lot of different ones, and I don't drink them, so I don't know what they taste like.
It's not
so
that hard.
I don't know what's good, and it's like if a bartender, you're trying to be a bartender, but you never drank alcohol.
Yeah, actually, that is possible. I mean, the age to be a bartender in Rochester was 18, and while I did drink alcohol when I was 18, I applied to be a bartender.
Yeah, but you see the trouble here, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, you have a significant disadvantage, and so the thing is, what were we talking about?
Right.
You got me on the tangent about the bartending and the coffee making.
I kind of want to just get right to the whole teachers union thing, because this is why I'm so ambivalent about this issue. Because there's too many conflating factors. The fact that they're trying to pay the teachers less than I pay in taxes, like, that amazes me with anger and rage.
Yeah, it's like,
but
hello, we need to pay teachers more so that we can actually attract quality people to be teachers and not just schmucks to be teachers. And then that would make the children's better and so forth. For
and
the
also,
good of our
the
entire
idea that,
society.
All right, maybe they can't afford it. Maybe the cuts have to happen. I don't believe that, but maybe say that's the case. Why do they also need to remove the union's right to collectively bargain? Why do they also need to take that away? But to be ambivalent, I generally hate teachers' unions because I feel like they actually are the causes of a lot of the problems in schools.
Yeah, well, I'm sure not. Every teachers' union is different, right? But yeah, it's strange. You have this teachers' union, right? And it's getting beat up. So basically, the teachers are getting screwed. And I'm like, oh, that's bullshit. Teachers, I believe the teachers need to be paid a lot more money. So, like I said, we can get high quality people to be teachers, which will then thus generate high quality students, which will the future of the country and the world will be vastly improved. An investment in better teaching is a much better use of money than anything else you could invest in. Even I could say health. It's better to put money into teaching. That I would put money there before I put it into healthcare or defense or a lot of other things.
Maybe defense, because if you don't have any defense, it doesn't matter how smart you are.
I'm not saying you don't have any defense, but the fact is that the vast majority of the U.S. budget is defense, and we could cut it back.
It depends on how you read it. There's another reading of our budget that says the vast majority of it is healthcare for old people.
I would still put money into the future rather than into the past.
So
I'm not saying no money for the old people.
So
I'm
I was
saying,
about to say. So you're saying death panels?
no,
No death panels?
I'm saying that the education would be a higher priority than the old people, and I would want the pie. I wouldn't want either pie to be zero. I'm saying I would want the education pie slice to be bigger than the old people pie slice.
Why
You want to invest your money in the future. Investing in the past is like losing money. Where putting it into the future is going to make things go up, and as time goes on, not down. Right? You're basically throwing money in the poop hole, or you're throwing money in the bank. Right? Anyway.
So do IT guys need unions?
Depends.
On what?
On what kind
I'm
of
just
work
curious
you're
because
doing.
I've realized IT has changed so much in the past decade that it's gotten to the point to where the majority of IT work, I would argue, is barely skilled labor. Like, it is not any more difficult to do menial IT. In fact, it is easier to do basic menial IT than it is to be a car mechanic.
It is incredibly easy, but very few people can do it.
I know, and that annoys me.
It's like this just incredibly skilled job. It's a really easy job, but even when you train someone, they still can't do it.
But at the same time, IT workers are by and large treated like shit.
Many of them are treated like shit. Not all, but many. I think one thing that really makes it so that IT and computer science workers in general don't need to unionize is that the demand for the labor is much higher than the supply. So even though the certain positions are low skilled and others are high skilled, right? You can change employers almost at any time depending on where you live and make a ton more money. So
not depending on
you
where
don't
you
need to
live.
unionize. You just quit and go somewhere else.
It's only if you live in a major city.
Which most do.
Yeah.
Right? And even outside of a major city, you can still easily change jobs to get more money. I could change jobs and get more money at any time.
Yep.
Another thing is that even if you don't have a union, IT workers still have a lot of leverage against the company that they work for. Often, they will have some knowledge of some systems or control of some systems that if they quit, the company would be like, shit. And they wouldn't easily be able to hire a replacement that, every place I've ever worked, there have been legacy systems that have required some sort of, sure, someone could come in and figure it out, but it'll take them time. And there's always going to be some, special knowledge just for that system that is unique to that employer. If you work in a factory, you see a lot of the same machines factory after factory, and there's still a few things that are specialized for that one factory, right? But, they're not that complicated. And they're usually provided by a vendor who they have a financial relationship with and stuff like that.
Have you ever worked in a factory?
I've been to factories.
You've never worked in one. I mean, I supported the production line at the fab at IBM for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's not quite like that.
Uh-huh.
In fact, there is a large amount of kind of mechanical, technical work that needs to be done in factories, independent of the workers who run the machines.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm talking about the people who run the machines.
Yeah, the people who run the machines, it's actually mostly unskilled work.
Yeah. But the point is that, you can be replaced easily. There is no special knowledge that is like unique to only that company.
But at the same time, all right, you've got the people who actually work the machines, and it's very low skilled. There is a similar number of people who exist solely to maintain the machines, and there's basically nobody else.
Well, those are IT workers, basically. They're working with technology.
Yeah, you could argue that, except that is not what is taught in IT degrees.
No, it's not.
It's more.
But it's still, I consider it maybe not an IT worker, but it's definitely a T worker. You're not information technology, but you're still a technological worker, and a lot of the same things apply.
They're basically mechanics more than anything.
Yeah, but how different is a mechanic? Sure, a lot of cars are very, very similar. If you can work on one car, you can work on others. But if you work in, say, a Volkswagen dealership, right? There's going to be some specialized things just for Volkswagens that you learn all about. And if you hire a guy who got fired from the Toyota dealership, he's going to have to learn those things.
Well, thus the rub. I feel like one of the big determiners of whether or not people actually want or need unions comes down to not whether or not they're able or willing, but whether or not the job itself, by and large, on average, allows people the chance to specialize and to gain specialized knowledge, even if that knowledge wasn't necessarily required to start the job. For example, working in financials, I'm a fixed protocol expert. I know the fixed protocol like the back of my goddamn hand. I deal with it on a daily basis.
There are plenty of other people who do.
Not that many, though.
But not that many.
And because of the nature of my work, I did not need to know it getting into my job, but at the same time, I had the opportunity to learn it in the course of my job. And having the ability to learn a specialized skill, by and large, obviates the need for that individual person to care about a union.
Right, because it's like if they fired you or treated you badly, right? Not even if you couldn't quit and get a higher paying job elsewhere, if you tried to go on strike, just you on your own. You don't need to team up with anybody. You alone can bargain with the company, because if you left, right, they would have to get someone without that specialized skill, and it would financially damage them in terms of the time it took for that person to learn that skill. So you don't need to team up with anybody because you alone have leverage, right? Whereas if you do not have a lot of skill or a specialized skill, just you leaving doesn't hurt the company at all. The only thing that could hurt them is if a bunch of you left all at once.
Yep.
Then you would need multiples to get leverage. I individually have a lot of leverage against almost any company I work for.
If only all those workers could come up with some sort of way to organize themselves and threaten to leave all at once. Perhaps a union.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to the teachers' unions, it's a special case because at the same time, as I said, I think teachers need more money, and I think we should give them more money to improve education of children and the future. But
I mean, at least in the public perception and in my experience and my perception, a lot of unions, especially teachers' unions, tend to have a perverse set of incentives where they'll value something like seniority higher than actual skill.
Yes.
I feel like seniority should have basically zero bearing on any form of advancement in any company.
Yes, basically teachers' unions will basically fight and use their power to get certain policies enacted, which, while they are pro-teacher, right, are very anti-student. And it's not like the teachers are actively thinking that they want to hurt the students, right? They're not, I don't believe that many teachers are malicious and say, I want to fuck all the students over. Yeah, let's turn them into morons. There might be one or two teachers out there like that, but not many, right? But it's just a side effect, right? They think to themselves, right? Tenure is a thing that exists. I want tenure so that I can have incredible job security. I want job security. I want all these things. Not realizing or not, or making it a lower priority, the fact that, you having tenure actually hurts the students. Or, you shouldn't judge me. I'm a teacher. You shouldn't judge me based on how smart my students are, right? Well, it's like, no, actually, we should for the good of the students. We should fire the crappy teachers.
Well, I think there's a secondary problem in teaching, and I've realized it, that it's not just that they pay teachers, by and large, shit. Coincidentally enough, they pay teachers the worst in the areas that need the best teachers. But there's also this problem that despite the fact that the salaries are very low for teachers, the barrier to entry is arbitrary and high.
Yeah,
right now, I think I could teach a pretty damn good computer class, and I think I could actually teach math and things like this to a degree.
Yeah, and I don't even have any, educational skills. I don't have any.
No school would let me teach high school. No way would they let me be a teacher. I'd have to, in the very least, get certified and go for my master's and do all this BS, despite all the studies showing that having a master's in no way correlates with student performance.
Nope, not at all.
And I feel like there are a lot of people who want to be teachers for whom the money is not even the problem. I think there are a lot of very dedicated people who are very passionate who would be teachers, even accepting the low salaries, but the barrier to entry is just too arbitrary and too high, and they are unable to even think about pursuing it.
Yeah, there are people, I know, like a lot of college professors, right, especially ones I had, would, because this summer vacation at school, right, they would go work a real job in the summer, make a ton of money, and then teach at college the rest of the year because that's what they liked. I had high school professors who were actually college professors, and they would drive back and forth between the college and the high school.
Yeah.
Actually,
one of the best teachers I ever had in high school, he's the one who turned me from someone who enjoys grammar to someone who, shall we say, is a lover of grammar. He's the one who turned me on to the lively art of writing.
A quality teacher?
Quality teacher. He carried a handgun to school and was a lawyer for very big, kind of dangerous federal criminal cases outside of school.
Uh-huh. Do you ever get in trouble for bringing a handgun to school?
I don't know if the school knew or if they signed it in or what, but he definitely had a handgun with him all the time.
Whoa.
Yeah, he kept it in his briefcase.
Oh, okay, but it's like, it wasn't like he had it on his hip.
No, it wasn't like he's wearing it in class.
Okay, I was going to say.
But he had it with him.
All right. I'm sure if he got caught like today, that would be, the worst.
Yeah.
All over the news.
I think we've about wrapped this up. It's difficult for us to talk about it.
It's just it's just one of those things, another one of those political issues where the vast majority of people you talk to have a simplistic, one-sided black or white opinion. They're either like, yeah, union Teamsters, or they're like, all unions must die.
Well, my trouble is that my
capitalism.
opinion, my opinion is strong as it is, and yet it doesn't affect me directly because I am not the kind of person who will ever need or be involved with a union.
No, but it is sort of like a homeowners association. And like, if I went to work somewhere and they said there's a union, I'd just be like, yeah, I'm not working here. You know, or if I went to go do business with a place and they had a union and it was like a convention center that was getting in my way and I had an option to go somewhere else that did not have the union that would not get in my way, I would be very likely to pick the other place.
Yep.
Even
but
though
guess,
I respect the need of many, some workers to unionize.
I guess the point is that is it not worrying to you that people like us who by and large are not affected by this issue seem to have more complex opinions than the majority of people who talk about the issue?
Well, I think that people, when, it's one of those things where when you get, a lot of people, when they argue about anything, right? For example, if you wanted to talk about teachers' unions with a teacher, they would disagree with the hell with us, right? And people would take their opinion, right, on, say, if I was arguing with a teacher on television about teachers' unions and I studied up and I went to it, right? People would take the teacher's opinion as more valid than mine just from the get-go because, well, they're a teacher. I'm a computer guy. What do I know
But Scott,
about it?
at the same time, when we go and talk about computers, shouldn't people take our opinion more highly than
No, because
other
people just look down on
people?
computer people in general. But the thing is that from my perspective, there are cases, this being one of them, where when you're too close to the issue, you can't see the forest for the trees, right? And I think that, as just being someone who just, looks at many, many things from afar on the internets, right? There are
it's
many
lovely
things.
being up in our ivory tower looking down upon the masses.
I see a lot of forests, but I don't see a lot of, trees. So, while I'm sure there are plenty of things that I don't see up close, right? Lots of small details, right?
I'm sorry. I was going to say something really horrible when you said that.
All right.
I was going to say vaginas.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Whatever.
Anyway.
Where does that even come from?
Nothing. It's just a joke.
All right. I'm like, how does that relate to this?
It's things that you are not likely to see up close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's many details of a unionized situation that I would not see. I don't know how to collectively bargain or anything like that, or but there are still many things that I see from afar that the people who you would take their word more seriously do not realize. And they probably couldn't be made to realize because they're so close to the situation they can't get it exactly right. And you need to combine those the faraway view and the close view to get the true picture of how things really work.
The disinterested and enlightened opinion.
Yes.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geeknights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.